Last week I made a little video expressing my concerns about Ubisoft leading Rayman's return, but frankly it doesn't sit right with me that the last thing I said about this was negative. I do love Rayman, and I'm tremendously excited about what could be coming. I think Ubisoft will do a good job given the recent Prince of Persia game. I just thought sharing my concerns were important. Either way, today I want to share my biggest wishes. Not a game plan for the future, but specifically what I wish the next Rayman game would look like. So, without further ado, I must bring the video to a halt and ask you kindly for a like and a subscribe if you haven't already. You're also active in the comments and I love it, so thank you all for the support so far. Anyway, I won't talk about Rayman 3's remaster, whether this is happening or not, as that's kind of limited in terms of what it can be. You know, it'll be the same game, but slightly prettier. Also, we don't know for sure if it's happening. I mean, I'm fairly confident it is, but I don't actually know for sure. I'm not an insider, although I wish I was. Ubisoft, talk to me. So a remake is the big thing that's been leaked and talked about mostly in recent times. I think we can all safely say that a Rayman remake is happening. Which one is still up in the air? I think we can rule out Rayman 3 simply due to the fact that Michel Ancel has been consulted, but he never worked on Rayman 3, at least not in a major capacity. So it wouldn't make any sense really. And Origins and Legends just won't be being remade anyway. They're too new and they're not the kind of games that would be. So it's either one or two, though for what I want in terms of big wishes, it doesn't really matter. Starting with gameplay, there are three major aspects I want to see from the next Rayman game. Number one, the movement needs to be fluid. It needs to feel as smooth and easy to play as Rayman always has felt. I know this might sound obvious, but I've tried developing a platformer myself and I've spent months working on just the movement alone and it still never felt great to play, so this is a big, difficult thing to get right. I love the momentum-based movement of Origins and Legends, but if this is a 3D game, I think momentum might be a bit tricky. Just don't make Rayman feel too heavy. You know, I don't want him to slide around everywhere whenever I stop moving the thumbstick, like in that Rayman 2 demo we saw last month. He jumps high, he runs fast, and is incredibly responsive. That needs to stay. I'm sure it will, but regardless of whether it will or not, this is a big must, and I just wanted to say it. Number 2. Boss fights. Again, this might be a bit of a redundant point to make because Rayman does have a habit of having plenty of bosses, and if it's a remake of either 1 or 2, it would be weird if they left out the bosses that already existed and didn't remake them. But think about Rayman 3. Think about all those bosses and how different, unique and exciting each one was. I want to see that again. I want each boss to challenge me in every way it can while also staying true to the fair nature Rayman typically had, maybe not the first game, but ever since then. The boss fights were always so creative too, so I would hope that's not lost either. This is more aimed at the new game if there were to be one, as a remake would obviously have to take all the original bosses and try and do them justice without changing too much. Which, you know, it could be tricky, but at least they'll have a good starting point there. Anyway, think Reflux. I want more of that. Number 3, the combat needs to be fun. Now if they're remaking Rayman 2, this isn't quite as important, just because that's not really a combat focused game. However, if they do a sort of reimagining and shake things up with more combat, then they will need to rework it. But let's say they do a Rayman 1 3D remake, which would be insanely cool. For the record, I think that would be, something I've wanted to see my whole life. If that is the case, oh hell yeah. But if that, it would need a new combat system, and that's something that 3D platformers typically haven't done well in the past. However, Rayman 3 absolutely nailed it. I'm not saying take everything from Rayman 3, like the combat, word for word, code for code, all of that. Don't do that. That would be derivative, and that would be a shame to make such a carbon copy sequel or prequel or remake or continue. You know what I mean. But the idea of ranged attacks with limited options, you know, curving left or right, direct attacks, kicking and charging power, that's kind of all you can do, and it all works so well in Rayman 3 and could absolutely be applied to Rayman 1 if that were to be 3D. Think about all the enemies in Rayman 1. If they were 3D and played out like Rayman 3, they would be so incredibly fun to battle. Anyway, yeah, 3D platformers tended to always struggle with getting combat right, but Rayman 3 nailed it, so yeah, please make sure that the combat is at least that level of quality, even if it's a bit different. It's one of those things that makes Rayman 3 infinitely replayable for me, because it is just fun to fight hoodlums. I could also mention platforming, but that's kind of covered with how Rayman controls. The character movement dictates platforming quality far more than any other element. For example, you could have the best designed level in the world, but if your character controls like a tank, it creates a bottleneck. But a great to control character can make an empty room fun to jump around in. So yeah, movement should be the priority, and I think platforming kind of is an extension of that. Next up, I want to talk about design. This is a big one because there's much less objectivity to it. I know gameplay is also kind of subjective as everyone finds different things fun, but it's a lot easier to say categorically if something is good or fluid or, you know, conventionally fun. Whereas design is a lot more subjective. With that, I do have an opinion that I think is kind of unpopular, so I do want to preface that. I am happy to see Rayman again. and I am well aware that not one person is going to love every single design choice, so if some of this doesn't happen, that's okay. And if you want the opposite to me, that is more than okay too. And of course, please comment your opinions down below. I'd love to see what other people think and what their biggest wishes are. But yeah, I had better get it out of the way. Rayman's design. He got a redesign for Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope. I don't love it. Now I just want to say again, I know so many people do love this and I'm really glad about that. So if Rayman looks like this forever, I'm more than happy, because clearly the majority of the fanbase love it. And that's more important than just one guy getting his wish. But I just want to explain why I don't adore it. I think the hair is too puffy. It's quite big at the ends, you know, like a puff ball in a way, whereas in Rayman 3 it's thinner and pointier, in Rayman 2 it's thinner and straight, and it looks perfect in Rayman 3. I guess I prefer the hair to be thinner. It's almost like a rabbit's ears, not too fluffy and mostly thin tissue, if that makes sense. It makes way more sense for it to be helicopter hair if it's thinner like that, and I just kind of feel like the fluffy puffiness of his hair in Mario and Rabbids looks not necessarily too cartoony, but maybe losing the original vision of Rayman in a way, in favour of like, hey look, it's fluffy. Kids like fluffy things. I don't know. I'm kind of just talking. It's not the end of the world here. This is just me nitpicking. But yeah, ever since the reveal, I thought there was something I didn't love, and that's it. I don't particularly care for the eyebrows either, but he'd look weird without them, so unless his face gets a whole redesign, we've got to keep the eyebrows. However, I do actually love the rest of it, and I don't hope his face gets a redesign, so I'm fine with the eyebrows. His face is incredibly expressive, his clothes and shoes look perfect, if possibly a tiny bit over-designed in some cases, like too many lines on the clothes, but that doesn't really matter, it's fine. It is a great overall design for Rayman. There's just one main thing I would change, and that's the hair, but even then I don't care that much, and if everyone else is happy, then I'm happy. We all have different opinions after all, and if Rayman comes back, Rayman comes back. I'd much rather see a good game with a design that I slightly don't like than a bad game or no game. But Rayman looks like he did 20 years ago, you know what I mean? So I'm just being nitpicky here, but hey, this is a video about what I want, and you chose to click on it, so there we go. If you disagree, that's more than fine, but just be nice about it in the comments. And also let me know what you think, because I do want to know. Am I alone in thinking this? Anyway, in terms of other design elements of the game, I want to see atmospheric lighting. A lot of games these days have fairly bland lighting with nice looking environments, whereas if we look at Rayman 2 and 3 specifically, the lighting and colour palettes of the entire scene is often what makes a world feel so memorable and stunning. So I do think it's important with franchises like Rayman, so deeply rooted in fantasy, to have strong colour work. Do you think your desert level looks too orange? It doesn't, trust me. Are you remaking Candy Chateau and you think it's too pink or the lighting is too glowy and magical? Please believe me, it really doesn't. Please do not hold back on the aesthetics of the world in Rayman, whatever you're making. Go intense, dial it up to 11, it will work. We will like it. Please. Another design thing that's quite important to me, and I guess applies to any game ever really, is make sure all the enemies are distinctly visually different, so I immediately know what they can do the second I see them. Think Rayman 2 and 3, where the enemies are all pirates or hoodlums, and now if they all looked exactly the same, like that first generic hoodlum, it could get really annoying. Having numerous designs for the different hoodlums who maybe attack more often or have 3 shots instead of 1 is vital. It makes the game so easy to understand, which I know sounds silly, but these things do matter. Rayman 1's a bit different, as every enemy is crazy and nuts and very, very different anyway, so if they are remaking that, then I guess all the enemies would be vastly different anyway. Moving on to another thing I want is the music. Obviously a game has to have music, but for a remake I would not mind remastered music from the original soundtrack of whatever game they're doing. It's some of the best music you'll ever hear in a video game, so just stick with it. You know, Rayman 1, Rayman 2, in fact all of them, they've got phenomenal soundtracks. So yeah, I would happily see that again. Think Beyond Good and Evil Anniversary Edition. They got the same soundtrack and they remastered it and it sounds incredible. Just do that if it's a remake. Otherwise, I do think Rayman could do with a proper theme. He kind of has one in each game, but I think a consistent one with variations for each world would be awesome. Rayman Legends kind of had a theme like that, and it was used briefly in the Mario and Rabbids DLC, so maybe they'll continue using that, and if they do, I'll be happy. It's not my favourite thing in the world, but I think a consistent theme would be nice. Now in terms of world and levels and whatnot, again, this applies to a new game more than anything. I'd like to see something along the lines of Rayman 3. Larger worlds, a more linear story that feels connected, and maybe 8 or 9 of those worlds. I love Rayman 2, but I do think a huge number of individual environments led to some of them feeling a bit samey at times. I'd rather they commit to a world and have fun with 4 or 5 sublevels in there. It does kind of sound like I'm just asking for everything to be like Rayman 3, but I mean, I guess I kind of am. We all want a Rayman return because we love the Rayman we got, so it's to be expected that I'd want the new one to be like the others, I guess. Anyway, yeah, I think big variety in the worlds is a must, so limiting the number of them just helps them feel more unique. Also a snow world. I need one. You smashed it last time. Do it again. Please. I also want to see references to the other games. It's little, and it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but something like the Rayman 2 Easter egg from Hoodlum Headquarters would be fun. Not major though, just like, it's cool, I like it. Now, I'm quite a big achievement and trophy hunter on Xbox and PlayStation, so just a little thing I would like to see. Obviously some trophies would be for completing the story, collecting every lum, defeating X number of enemies, etc. But I'd like to see trophies like, in this level, do this, or beat this level without collecting any tings or lums. Extra challenges like that would just make replaying each level more meaningful. If these were built-in challenges to the game, that would be even better. You could maybe tie cosmetics to the challenges. For every 3 challenges you complete, you can alter Rayman's clothing a little bit, you know, give him red shoes instead of yellow shoes. Or maybe even visual cheats like a big head mode or goofy sound effects when Rayman punches. These kind of gags would fit the Rayman brand quite well and give players an optional challenge with a good reason to engage. I think it'd be fairly quick and easy to add as well and really increase the longevity of the game. This would also help justify a remake. We have so many remakes these days that don't do a lot that's new, so I think new features or gameplay mechanics, even if they're small little visual ones like that, are a must if you're going to remake Rayman 2. Not so much with Rayman 1 as it's so old, and if it is a 2D remake it's probably going to be viciously different anyway, and obviously if it's a 3D remake you're just making a new game, basically, that follows the story and vibes of Rayman 1, so that's fine. But yeah, I think that might be everything. Let me know what your biggest wishes are. Do you also want the same things as me? I'm really happy Rayman is coming back, so I just figured it'd be fun to get my wish list out there. And hey, if anyone at Ubisoft watches this, I hope this was helpful. I also have a visual effects degree, and I'm trained in software development, so hire me please. Oh, I'm only kidding. Anyway, thanks for watching. I really appreciate all the support my videos have been getting recently. You're all awesome. As always, stay purple, stay limbless, stay remade, and I'll see you in the next one.